Andrea.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. I've loved watching your artistic creations that you put out into the world and listening to your podcast episodes as well and everything that you're
Oh,
doing.
so good.
Um, I would love to start with your Instagram name, which I assume is kind of like your artist name, maybe Nourishing Witch.
Yes.
Can you talk
Yes.
a bit about that? I love that so much because I feel like just the world we grew up in, which does not anywhere near nourishing, right? It's just like evil or catty or like mixing up potions to manipulate. And just, I think a lot of people are kind of coming to realize that, not all witches, or maybe even none of them, were ill-intentioned to begin with. They were just kind of targeted as
Mm,
that.
mm, love that. Um, it was very unexpected. Like
Mm.
I wasn't like into much into like the witch theme, or like the word hadn't appeared like in my psyche that strongly. Um, this was 2020, like the summer of 2020, coming through like that first wave of the pandemic, and just feeling like I didn't know what was like. I was very disoriented, as I believe many of us were too. And I remember one day just feeling like, okay, I need to clear a lot of like my drawers here in my creative space. I did like this massive exercise of burning a lot of the old stuff.
Mm.
And with like there was no intention, there was no like, let me like summon the next new thing. Like there was nothing of that. It was really just like, I need some space. And I burned it. And maybe like 2 days later, the witch part came, because the nourishing had already
Mm.
been there.
Okay.
Like my previous like the name of my previous business, which I think was more like the previous state in which I
Mm.
was Nourishing Nest. Like I feel like I
Oh.
needed a nest to just
Mm-hmm.
nourish myself after like a lot of depletion. And
Mm.
then when the witch came online, was like, whoa, yes.
I like that.
And I've been journeying with that since then. I feel like, yes, it's my artistic name, and in some sort of very interesting magical way is also the archetype that is my guide and my teacher in the way
Mm.
that I'm creating, in the way that I show up, in the way that I want to offer the things that I love in service to myself and in service to others. So it's a little bit of like a dual, it's a character, it's a figure.
Yeah. So if people that are listening really can only associate witch with like magic and potions and spells, like what about the word witch do you feel like you express or embody? Like why that word? What does that mean for you?
Mm, And I think that this is going to touch on something delicious. Reverend Brianna Lynn, which is our common mentor,
Uh-huh.
uh, she offered once this acronym of the word witch that I was so mind blown by. So if you take the letters, the W stands for wise, the I stands for intuitive, the T stands for teacher, the C, she said counsel, and in my particular flavor of this, it's creatrix, and then the
Ooh.
H is a healer.
Oh my God, I love that.
So
Wow.
that's what I mean when I mean witch.
I love
Oh,
when
I
she
have
does that
chills.
with words, or even I've seen a couple different people that do it. And at first I'm like, oh, that's so like, playful, like whatever. But like, whenever you really start to do that often, it makes it, I don't know, you can like almost change the meaning of what a word means for you. And it's so powerful because that's how we
Mm,
communicate and relate to everything. So, generally through language and words.
yes. And
Oh,
it's a
I love
huge
that.
part of what I love doing, like the refinement of words, like the reinterpreting of things through language.
Mm.
So when I'm matched with like someone that has like the same, stream, or like that loves doing the same, it's just like, oh, great, delicious. And
Yes.
that always felt very alive for me, and still very feels very alive for me. That like wise, intuitive teacher, creatrix, healer.
I have to go
Um,
write that down. That is so beautiful. I love that.
Sweet.
So, let's talk a little bit about like your art journey and like what are
Mm,
you creating right now, and what does that even process look like? Because I feel like some people have this idea of like, well, I'm not a creator, or I'm not an artist, and
mm,
to be honest, like we all are, at least we're creating something, whether it's a meal, or children or a garden or taking care of a pet. Like there's this creative expression that's within all of us.
mhm,
So how do you maybe deepen that or nourish that? And like, what's that journey been like for you?
mm. I love that. Has like multiple layers to it. So
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
like start, from like my own experience. I feel like I've always had that more in what we conceive artistic. Like I had this like desire for drawing and painting since I was very young.
Mm.
Um, I've always had like markers and pens and paper, like always around, no matter where I go. I travel on like airplanes and whatnot, and I have like snacks and a coloring book. Those are like my two pieces that I take everywhere. Um, and there was certainly a point in my life where that wasn't nourished.
Mm.
And when this innate capacity, and in however way it expresses itself, maybe it's through music, maybe it's through words, maybe it's through coloring, through dancing, through painting, like it has so many expressions, but it needs to be tended to. And
Mhm.
children come innately with that. Like every single child will have like a particular inclination for something,
Mhm.
something of any nature that will like help them express themselves and like find themselves within life, right? And I went through like a process of unnourishment, like malnourishment of that. I kept it very alive for myself in like tiny ways, but yeah, like going through like the schooling system and even university. Like I studied graphic design because I wanted quote unquote a creative career. Like I wanted to explore that. And by the time I finished, I was like, I want nothing to do with this. I don't know what this is. And I thought it was creativity. Like I
Wow.
thought that that was the creative realm. And I was like, I want nothing with this. And I was like, okay, that was also like the time that I had my spiritual awakening. So I was like, okay, let's swing the pendulum to that side and start studying a whole lot of like cool things about like herbs and flowers and toning and like angels
Mm.
and crystals. Like I went through like the whole other like the whole other trail, let's say it like that. And then mm, I think like a couple of years ago, like very similar to like that, let's say 2018, 19, 20, like in that range, um, I started realizing that I really needed to reach back to that thing that was prior to all the things that I had learned.
Mm.
And it took me a really long time. And I think that has been coming more and more in the latest years, like really like the past two, around
Are you referring
this.
to that child like
Yeah.
wonder and play of
Yeah.
creativity? Okay.
Yes.
Mm.
And how what I had learned in those like older, like, in that young adult phase and like in my early working years and all this stuff wasn't creativity. It
Mm.
turned out that what I had been told that I was creative, it was actually productive.
Mm.
So
Oh.
I had this massive paradigm shift. Like I'm still like catching up to that. Like it's still a work in progress from the past year of realizing that creation is not the same as production.
Mm.
And so many of us think that it is.
Yeah, production has to, it's like, it almost has to be this like perfectionism or refinement, and like it has to be uh like edible by other people, or what's that word, like other people need to be able to consume
Consumption.
it and all these
Yeah.
different things, but that's not what that's for.
And it needs to be standardized and it needs to grow like linear and the process needs to be able to be measured and you can have like deadlines and you can have like all these like things that I was, once I started pulling that thread, like I was like, oh my God, this whole thing is gonna, you know, come into pieces. Um, and it has been a huge part of my internal work. And then at one point I realized like I know I'm not the only one like struggling with this. I know so many of us will benefit from creating from the understanding of creation rather than production, because I felt, like when I would approach creation from that production internalized framework,
Mm-hmm.
I would always like burn myself out. I would always like end up hating what I like decided to do. Like it
Well,
started with this great idea and I was like, oh my God, he's amazing. And then 3 days later, I had suffocated the idea under all these structures and like all this rigidity around like how that should go.
yeah.
And a part of me, it's always like, peace out. Like
I
we're
feel
not
like
doing this.
productivity, specializes in the end product, the final piece, where like creativity it's not about what comes at the end, it's about the whole experience and journey
Mhm.
of the expression, no matter where it takes you, and just honoring where you're at in that process.
Exactly. And it includes the end result.
Right.
It
Yeah.
includes, it's like big enough, nourishing enough, generous enough that includes the part where you're quote unquote producing, you know.
Mhm.
Of course you want to make that piece of art. Of course you know, like you want to paint. Of course you want to make a song or an album or a book, you know. That's a product, and you're going to have moments where you are in the craft of it. But the framework behind that is that nourishing you and holding you through the process and softening you through a lot of like the tightness that comes around that? Or is it
Mm,
driving you insane because of all the metrics that you need to, yeah, fulfill or achieve or whatever the thing is?
mhm.
And the truth is, like, even when we have like the most standardized process, even when we are like, because this, you know, like I have applied myself to this, you know, like even when we try to box the thing in so tightly so that we can make it almost like error free, it's absolutely like out of our control.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's an element of it that will forever be out of our control,
Mm,
and there's no way of predicting that, or like, you know, there's I personally feel there's a point where it's like leaning in and trusting and breathing through
mm,
it. And I feel like readjusting our lenses and our inner understanding and workings around what creation is and who you are as a creative, which is ultimately like who you are as a human being, because that's not separate. That's also
mhm.
something that I've really, really come to massage, especially because like I have a lot of people in the in you know, in my world, or people that come around the things that I do, that pretty much like what you were saying with the question was like, I'm not creative, or like I don't do things like how you do them.
Mhm.
And my answer is always like, hold on with it, you're not creative thing. And the whole point is that you don't do things how I do them.
Exactly. That's wonderful that you don't do it my exact way. Thank you.
Exactly, exactly. Now let's explore what is your way and how
Yeah.
that wants to be expressed through you. And I think also the part of this that is also like it's heartbreaking for me, but it's also a big drive in the work that I do, is the like not having elders
Mm,
that can hold us through that,
mhm.
that can hold us through the process of like, wow, you had a great idea. You
Mhm.
really want to give yourself to it. Do you really want to follow this curiosity? It's gonna get intense, but can we go there? And I'll just be here and I'll witness you and I'll celebrate you and I'll hold you and I'll offer, you know, whatever has been my lived experience, just as a soft place for you to land in your own, if that's what you need.
Mm. I feel like, yeah, that's so far and few in these days. And like, it's great to have friends that can do that, but it's different to have an elder or even like a mentor to be able to
Yeah,
do that. Someone
yeah,
to learn from and be able to has been where you are and can kind of help you and guide you or just see you.
exactly.
As you were saying that, I was thinking of sometimes when I struggle to find my own inspiration, like that comes from within me. I kind of usually gravitate towards other people's creations that like ignite something with me, like resonate with
Mhm.
something with me. And I try to remember not to copy them, but
Mhm.
like see what in that is resonating with me. Okay, take a piece of that and like let's like build with it, or let's like sit with it and see what comes up. And then there's some days where I don't need any inspiration. I'm out in nature by myself or just in my own head with my kids. And I'm just like, I got it all right here. It's bubbling up by itself. I don't need. So
Mm, mm. I love that. And I think that it indeed, you know, there are moments where like the inspiration will come from within, and that's beautiful. And there's also moments where we can look around
Mm-hmm.
just with those like marveled eyes at like what is out there and what is like igniting that, ooh, this could be. And then I think like, but I think it's a refinement, and I think it's a maturing of yourself as a creator, to have also the discernment of like how far is inspiration, and how far like up until like where it's inspiration, and where you start like leaning into like I just want this to be like this
Mm-hmm.
person,
Mm-hmm. Or I just want to put
because
something out, so I'm just going to kind of copy what they're doing and put a twist on it and then put it out there.
yes, and I think that that is exactly like production disguised as creation, because
Mm.
then you're not in the juice of what that feels like and that how what that moves in you, but you're wanting to achieve like either the recognition of that person, or like the structure of that person, or you know, there's something more subtle that is like wanting the result of that rather than the process of seeing that coming through you.
You just like struck something in me when you said that, like of how I can just see in myself of whenever I want to copy what other people are doing or kind of like follow in their footsteps, I'm like seeing the recognition or the success that it seems, and they may or may not be having that, right? But from what my point of view is me saying, I want that. So maybe I'm just going to do what they're doing, you know?
And it's such a, you know, and I also feel like it's such a natural thing to do. Like we're also like, we're creatures that learn by doing.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of us is wired to look at someone else and see how they're making it, and try to replicate that. So it's not like it's good or bad, it's not right or wrong. It's like the discernment of like, is this for me or not for me?
Or it's not the what,
And
it's the how.
yes, exactly. Is this path for me or not? And sometimes we need to try and make mistakes along the way and have like a little reckoning with life along the path, and then recalibrate. But yeah, I think it's a developing of maturity, of creative maturity, of you know, creative and human. Yeah.
So I have this quote written down from a friend. So they were talking about creativity, and he said to be able to imprint a part of yourself, aka like putting something out, a creation of some sort, you have to first know yourself. And being on the path of remembering our creative nature and recognizing that, like that's what we are. We are creative nature, is a template for everything that we experience. So whenever we talk about creating things, I love that we have recently just in like the mystery school with Brianna, we've talked about digesting experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that looks like breath and movement and crying and dancing and singing, but it also can be like artistic expression too. I just want to talk about that a little bit and like what digesting experiences is, and like how has creativity like helped you navigate certain life experience or even just emotions in general?
I love that question, and that has been so much in my field also in the past like days. So for those of you watching, this painting that I painted right here at the back, and for those of you listening, just go and like check the YouTube. I did it out of a state of like inner tension that I couldn't figure it out what it was.
Wow.
I was feeling a lot of tension. I had been breathing. I had been doing like, you know, like my body-based practices. And yet nothing felt like it was like piercing through like the compressive tightness around me. And at one point I just felt it. I was like, okay, let me just go and get a big canvas, and I don't know what I'm going to paint, but it's going to come. And I started, and it started with like the swirls at the background. And then I felt the drag, and I was like, whoa, okay, I've never, how do you do that? And just like, I've been long enough through this, and this is such a beautiful, beautiful thing about at least like how I'm seeing myself through the process right now. Even when it looks like messy and like, ugh, I don't know if this is even gonna make sense at the end, I just keep going because it's like more often than not, things like start coming along, and then the dragon appeared, and the whole like of energy, and the name of the painting, or like what came through, was the breath of the dragon,
Oof.
and was like learning how to breathe through the intensity.
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay, I can do that. I can learn how to breathe through all of this. And I feel sometimes creating things with our hands offers like a back door that we don't normally are able to access through our cognitive mind, through like language or through story, or through the story might come around afterwards, and it's a beautiful thing to like meet yourself like somewhere in the middle of those two. But one of the things that I know for sure is like when we are very emotionally charged, definitely the body is great. Like we've learned also through the mystery school, these breath, sound, movement, touch that Brianna has very generously offered to us, on and on and on. It's a beautiful thing. And for me, it's like almost like the next like, or not a next because it's not a sequence, but you know, like another angle from that is like the making of something. Is it a soup? Is it a song? Is it a painting in my case? Is it like
Pottery.
pottery, or like embroidering, or what kind of thing wants to come out of your hands as well? And especially when we're like tight, like the hands are the extension of the heart. So this is like a really beautiful thing also to think about it like this, like the heart is the meeting place of like your life force energy, like these lower chakras, these like base energy in your body, and the upper energy. So that's where everything meets. And then the hands can be like these pathways in which that comes out.
I love that.
So
Wow.
whatever you do with your hands, it's beautiful and it's powerful. And if you haven't like grabbed a pencil since you were 4, can you let that be that? And can you let that be okay? And, you know, be with the part of you that actually knew how to do this before you forgot.
Or before you were told it has to look a certain way, otherwise it's not worth it. It's not worth the time.
Exactly. The time, or the effort, or like no one is going to look at it, or that
just,
for me
just do
is,
it just to do it.
yes. And it is a huge wound to not be connected to that part, because so much of our human experience, we cannot digest it through our minds. We cannot digest it just through the logic of things, because so much things don't happen in a logical sequential, measurable way.
Half the time it doesn't even make sense.
Half the time it only makes sense like 3 years down the line, when you have been like, okay, let me like recap on the past 3 years, and then it's like, oh, I see the silver lining like leaving very down under the ground, you know? So having I think like it comes as a, I don't know, let me like reframe that.
Sure.
I hope it would come as an invitation for every person to remember that creative nature. Because I don't know how to do human life without that. And again, you know, like I remember having it, I remember losing it, and I remember reclaiming it. But there's so many people that don't remember having it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've always been interested in art and just like doodling and drawing, even if I didn't think it was good. Like I still just do it just to do it, but really playing with my kids and getting into that mode of like, okay, I'm not getting into this. I'm not going to sit down with my kid with this end goal or this intention to like purposely teach them something and get them to this next mile marker and like, you know, whatever, like just literally being there and just watching them be in their play like helps to get me in my play. And then we're just playing just to be silly, and the time just like is non-existent. And like that space has been so healing and nurturing for me. And sometimes if I can't get my own space of like, okay, well, I'm going to go be creative, or I'm going to go do whatever, I'm just like, I'm going to go fucking play with my kids, because I know that's going to get me there, because they're already there. And I try to not take them out of that as much as I can, because I know how important it is.
I love that you touched on that. There is something that I think is very hard to explain to someone that hasn't had that experience in a while. And it is the power of timelessness, of that pocket that you just mentioned, where you are so in the joy of
It's like flow state.
Yes. And then everything vanishes for a moment. You don't know if it's like late or, like, and the moments where I have that, it's so precious, because we live so constricted in the time bind. Like, time is such a reticular thing. There's like so much like angles to it in the way that we perceive time in society, that to have the experience of like almost like getting out of that box for a moment through like play, creating,
intimacy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so good, and it's so healing, and it's so nourishing, going back to that word. And it might touch places that you didn't even know you needed. That's also like the mystery of all of this. Sitting down, like I sat down with that canvas because there was because I felt the urge, and because I've like developed this deeper listening to it, because this is part of my work, because this is part of the service that I know I'm here to offer, because this is part of my medicine, like all these things. So I'm taking my own medicine in this case. But I didn't know where it was gonna lead me. I was like, if it's bubbles, if it's red, if it's blue, if it makes sense, if it just doesn't make sense, I just need a moment to like digest this.
Would you say that you were almost like interpreting or just painting in a way that was reflecting what you were feeling within you? Is that kind of how the process was, or?
It's interesting. I was more like present with what I was feeling as the things were coming up. Because I feel like if you look at the colors, for example, they're very light. It's very like fluffy. It's very in the clouds. I wasn't feeling like that. I was like, if it had been chosen, if it had been a choice by how I was feeling, it would have probably been like dark and brown and red. But I don't know, like that's also a part of the alchemy of it. What I was craving was that lightness. Of course, there's the intensity of the dragon, and it's like, but there was a part of me that was aiming for the light cloud feeling, but I didn't know, like this is me telling you a story retrospectively, because I also didn't, it was not a conscious choice.
Right.
And I know that is very hard for some people to engage with, because again, maybe they weren't allowed, maybe they were told that they were just plain bad at it. Brene Brown says that like the two core most like painful wounds that like humans have is like wounds around their love, like their how lovable they are, and their creativity.
Wow.
So like wounds around belonging and love and yeah, and just being felt and taken care of, and like like the connection. And our wounds around creation, our wounds around creativity.
Wow.
And everyone has this. Like,
yeah.
Even the most prolific artists, even the people that you think are like way ahead or whatever the thing is, in whatever the structure we're gonna like say, when we're truly creating, that always freaking touches things. Always. So then it comes to like, what are we doing with that is being touched? Do we have the right kind of support in that? Do we have mentors or elders that can like, or midwives, honestly, to like help us birth ourselves through that process? And that's the thing that I particularly didn't find up until like very recently. And that is a big part of what I feel like it's really exciting for me in what I do and how I do it, in what I want to offer and what I want to keep offering.
That's beautiful. I love that. So I've personally, up until recently, some days it's better than others. Some days it's my husband that helps bring me back to center. Some days it's a good sleep or a bath or a hit of a weed pen. Like, honestly, like it's all different all the time. But some days I struggle with myself and I don't know how to explain that, where it's not something I guess I can put into words, but I guess just energetically, I'm just like blocking myself. I don't know why that wanted to be expressed, but I wanted to bring that up. Let's talk about like navigating stuckness, or like having that urge to escape things so quickly or to not feel emotions. I know you've shared some things in the past that you've struggled with, and I know we all have, honestly, and we all kind of don't like to sit with those things. And here you are with your dragon sitting with the fire and the fiery breath. Like, what do you tell yourself in those moments, or what tools have you like used, whether it's creativity or not? Like,
I think you actually touched on it. Like some days is a bath, some days is like crying yourself to sleep. Sometimes it's going to be going out on nature. Sometimes it's calling a friend. Sometimes it's journaling. And let's say I haven't like fully made peace with that, but that's at least like my direction, to let it be different every time, to not get like very prescriptive about like how I should get out of this stuckness or out of this discomfort or out of these, because the truth is, like, I don't even know.
Even just pain.
Yeah, exactly. And what worked yesterday doesn't seem to work today, and what worked like a year ago doesn't seem to work like anymore. So I think the fluidity of that is one that has helped me, like, to just reach out for the thing that I feel like I need in every moment. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Then I reach out for the next thing. That's one. And I've been contemplating this. I love that this is coming up in the conversation right now. The difference between ease and easy. I think like we have this over culture that has made a lot of things easy, but we're not necessarily feeling the ease of it.
Wow.
So we want things to be easy. We want like things to not be this like uncomfortable. We want relationships to be flowing. We want our creation to be like flowing. We want our businesses to be flowing. We want like all these easy breezy experiences. And they can be, and they arrive and they come, but we are not in a place of moving through it with ease. And that, I mean, I'm saying this like as if I like I've thought a lot about this. This is fresh. This is from today.
I love it.
This is from today as we're recording. I've been like really pondering on this idea of ease. And can I let myself move with ease through the hard, but also through the easy?
It's reminding me of just the presence and acknowledgement too. Like, whenever you're saying things are easy, I'm thinking convenient, fast, quick, done, one and done. Let's on to the next thing, versus like, okay, I'm here. This is what I'm moving through. This is what I'm experiencing. And just like that, the word, I can't use words to describe, but just ease just feels like I'm like gently floating back and forth in it. I'm not like rushing through it, like easy. Okay, fast, let's go. Drive-throughs, convenience, 15-minute appointments, just like, yeah, go.
Check.
Yeah, versus like, all right, I'm just gonna be here a moment. This is where I'm at. And I honestly, I just had a journal entry yesterday. I think I shared it on Instagram, but it was about presence and about breath. And like, I know we know that everything is temporary. This moment, this meeting, this life, like everything is going to change. So what's my rush of trying to hurry up and end it and get away from it? It's not going to be here forever. So can I just sit with it and experience all that I can from it? Because I know it's going to leave. I don't need to rush out of it and run away from it because it's going to do that by itself.
I know, and it's so freaking hard.
It is. No, it's not easy at all.
And that's, that's it's hard, and it's and it's cool, and it's beautiful, and it's heartbreaking, and it's transitory, and some things like feel like they last like years, and some things like last a second. It's like, what is this? But yeah, like going back to that is like, ooh, can I find a place within me that feels at ease in this? And maybe that place that find, like, might be like microscopic, might be like just a tiny place somewhere within me that.
Would you say ease is like just being that I'm okay? Or like,
Yeah,
what?
like,
Yeah, I'm okay with this.
I'm witnessing this, like the part of me that is not completely sucked by the thought, the people, like the drum, like the, I don't know, that it's not a sound, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then from that space, observe to the best of my capacity. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes feels like an absolutely uphill. I also know that when people say this, when I've heard other people say this, and I'm actually in a really shitty place, it feels even worse, because it's like, how do I get there? You know what I mean? It's like, I've seen like all these people, all these podcasts, all these like whatever, talking about this like ease state, and I'm just freaking in the throes of it. To just know that being in the throes of it is also part of being in it. And that sometimes we're able to get our heads out of the water and be like, wow, it's not all water. There's also like another, there's also another like place where I can stick my head, and then maybe I can stick an arm, and then maybe I can find a shore and then like step out of it.
Yeah.
But I think that there's no formula. Sometimes, like what you were saying, sometimes it's like having like a really trusted person, whether it's a friend or your partner or whomever, that can, support you in that. And it's so not a formula on like how to move. I feel also regarding stuckness, it's a tough one, because like when you're feeling stuck, you're really feeling stuck, and at the same time, what you just mentioned, like life is always moving, always. So there's a part of you that is fixated in this, while the rest is shifting, changing, moving. One of the things that I have been trying lately, it's a practice totally like as I'm speaking, it's like there's certain things that I know that if I let my mind go all the way there, it's almost like it's almost like a sticky tape. It's almost like quicksand. If my mind gets into that hole and it's trying to get itself out of that hole, the more it moves, the worse it gets. The more I try to find the answer, the more I try to like come up with the options or the ideas, or like, it's quicksand, mental quicksand. And I only know those places by being there and being like in the quicksand and like being completely like sinking in it. And by the grace of God, I don't know, coming out of it and being like, oh, that was a quicksand place.
Let's not revisit that.
Let's just be very mindful the moment that I start walking towards that direction and I feel like I'm going to go in that place that I know is a sinkhole. And it's not to prevent it, quote unquote, because I don't think that we're always in the possibility of like preventing those sort of places. But definitely, like when you're in it, I think that that's the thing. When you're in the quicksand and you're drowning and it feels like everything is uphill and like you don't know where it's up, where it is down, like nothing. But then you remember that that's the quicksand. It's almost like if you've been there before and you recognize that space and you find yourself in that space again and you're able to bring that's I think like what helps get us out of that.
Yeah. It's hard. I feel like my experience with that could have been said to like depression and anxiety, which I know so many people struggle with. And it's one of those things, like when you're in it, you can't see anything but it. And it doesn't matter what other people say to you. It's so hard to get out. But after climbing and clawing my way out many times, like I can tell like the slightest change of energy or thought process, that start that path
That
towards
trail.
that.
Yeah.
That's when I'm like, okay, we don't want to go there. Like, what do I need? Do I need to go like tell my husband I need you to hold me? Do I need to go cry? Do I need to just do something super fun and exciting to like just get me, whatever? And it's not so much like disassociation, but like just trying to like, okay, no, like I don't need to sit here and just keep spinning down this spiral, because I know it's just going to get me down in this deep dark hole, and then I'm going to be stuck.
Yeah, totally. And going back to what we were saying before, that's truthfully, I feel like that's developing your own maturity around your own quicksands and your own dark holes and your own.
You have
It's
to learn your
almost
own
like,
patterns.
yes, it's such a deep work of understanding your inner landscape. And I, this is a beautiful image. Like if you were literally a landscape, like
I
a
love that you used that
whole
word.
country, let's say, like a whole piece of like open land, there's going to be swamps, there's going to be like lakes, there's going to be rivers, there's going to be like beautiful places, there's going to be dark places. And how do we learn, like, how are we making the map of that place?
How are we navigating it?
Exactly. So there's probably like a trail within your inner landscape that leads to these like really dark caverns that are hot and like deserted. And I think we all have like some of those in our inner landscape. And yeah, and then like, how do we know, like, learn how to navigate that? And again, I think like it comes back to a lot of us, I think, like are feeling very hungry for learning how to do that. That hunger also sometimes leads to like problematic places where some people tell you that they know better what your inner landscape looks like than yourself, just to make a little like circle around that. And truthfully, there's also, I mean, the reason why I was bringing this up is like because of the elders, because we don't have other people that we have seen how they navigate their shit, how they navigate their trails, because we normally don't have like people that have been
our communities just aren't set up that way anymore.
Exactly.
We used to have our grandparents, or I guess the childbearing people, their parents would be around to take care and pass on and tend to the younger ones, especially the moms and the parents who were recovering from birth and all these things. And we were just like so generationally supported and protected and nourished. And I'm craving that so much. I'm really happy my mom is moving out here to Colorado. We haven't been gone but 6 months, and she's already like, I need my babies. Like, they give me purpose. They like, I feel like I have nothing without them. And I think that there's a reason for that.
Totally. And what you're saying, indeed, like, our structures are not like that anymore. They haven't been like that for a very long time. And I think a lot of our own inner craving for that, and how we're starting to like, ask ourselves these questions, figure out places where we can actually go and have some of that. It's important. And it's a beautiful and heartbreaking, both. When I say beautiful, I always like say like, yes, it's beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Rearranging of our landscapes, and like where your landscape meets mine, and when that I think like the generational thing, like the energy is still there, but sometimes we just need a human, sometimes we just need like that kind of level of connection that is like, we're good, you're good.
I mean, I'm also just thinking about how let's say like the difference of us being in communities that are self-sustained and self-supported and so concentric versus now, if I go out into the world, like there's this lack of intimacy and trust. Whenever I go to the supermarket or I go get my car changed or whatever, it's almost like we have these like walls of protection and masks. I mean, for good reason. Like there's been many occurrences that have taught us that but it's almost just like it takes away that the this connection that we could be. And I see it happen sometimes with certain people, you know, or in certain areas that people are a bit more willing to just be connect and like be real. And you can feel it. You can so feel it when someone is just being so genuine towards you, and when they're just playing their role, having their head down and just trying to get through the day, you know. And I get that everyone's going through something different, but there are some days where I just like, I just want to walk up to a stranger and like, do you just want to fucking hug right now, dude? Like, can I hug you? You know, like you can just feel it.
I feel you on that.
How are some ways that you personally connect with your body? Or I guess, like you said, it's not, you know, we could talk about all the tools until we turn purple and take all the courses and listen to all the podcasts, but it's not until we start to travel our own land. I love that you said, you referred to our bodies as our inner landscape, because it's so true. You know, my mom calls me a lot, and I'm in like the natural health field. And so she's always asking me like, what are some alternatives I can do, and yada, yada, all this stuff. And I'm like, Mom, I can give you like 10 different recommendations, but you've got to try them. Like you have to figure out what works for you. And I think that is very scary for her. She's not used to having that responsibility. But she wants the freedom, and you can't have that freedom without taking the responsibility, you know. And that's something I'm really learning, especially just craving to have my own land and learn to be self-sustainable, even if it's like 25-50% of my own sourcing of my goods and clothing and foods. Like I just want to at least get some part there, and I want all that freedom, but it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of structure. It takes showing up day after day, you know, like it's not easy. But yeah. Okay. So what has worked for you with connecting to your body and noticing the physical sensations versus getting stuck in the thoughts, which I know we still do, you know?
One of the things that I have also been refining through the years, and this has led me into the body deeper, was this: when I was younger, and for a very long time, I was like categorized like in this label way that I was just too sensitive. Oh, Andrea is so sensitive. Like I remember like my school teachers would be like, she's a great student, she like is very participant, she is very caring for her peers, but she's very sensitive. I remember that, you know. And for the longest time, it felt like a burden also, you know, to be so open and like feel streams from everywhere, not knowing what is mine, what it's like from this body and what is from other bodies, felt very disorienting. I tried for, you know, I tried to just like not be that person, and I am. So one of the things that has been huge has been like reconciling myself with my sensitivity. And that when I'm not at odds with it, my body feels so much. And then it's almost like this process of, I genuinely see it as, you know, like in every wizard, every magical story, you know, let's take Harry Potter for an example. There's this young magician that has a hell lot of raw power. And then it's up to how it learns to use that power, what it's going to determine how, you know, who it becomes. And this is giving me chills just saying this. I feel sensitivity is a lot like that too.
I love that.
And I know a lot of us are coming right now into this planet with a hell lot of like that open.
Yeah.
We're coming like loaded with oversensitivity because there's so much to be felt in our family systems.
There's so much that needs to be changed. How are we going to know what needs to be changed if we can't feel the effect it's giving us? Of like, oh, we could probably find a better way to do that.
Exactly. So there's so much that needs to be changed and so much that needs to be felt for things to be able to be shifted.
Mm-hmm.
So just embarking in the process of befriending my sensitivity. And that has been long, and it has been interesting and weird and painful and disorienting, and sometimes just noting where my boundaries are, and just like knowing that if I cross them I could, but that's going to cost me also something, most likely some sleep and some like mental ease. Like I could say yes to this, but I know tomorrow I'm gonna be like still thinking about it, it's still gonna be there.
Yeah.
So that has helped me land into realizing that, yeah, that my body is so responsive, and it is so attuned to what's happening.
I just feel like
and having so much patience. Oh, it requires, like, honestly, I don't always feel like I have it, but it requires so much patience to, dang, this is showing up, or this is, I'm feeling this. What I feel like a lot of the times, let's say a couple of years ago, I would try to understand it right away. And what I've come to understand is that I can't always access it through my mind first, although I would love to. I would love to freaking make sense of what this is. Why am I feeling so jittery? Why suddenly I'm like all clenched up and I can't breathe and I'm like tight, like 7 knots inside my belly,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's accessible. Sometimes I can ask myself 3 questions and get there. And sometimes it's not. And then that's, I feel like, the tools, more body-based tools. Okay, I can't access this through my mind. Okay, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that it's not accessible. It doesn't mean like it's gonna go to shit. Like, nothing. It means that maybe the doorway into this is not through my mind, but through my body. Or it can be through my creativity. Like, it's just like learning about like these doors that we can access, and that the mind is not the only door. It's the only door that we have quote unquote overdeveloped, because so much of like all of our lives happen up here. And in the face of a closed door, in a face of like something that is like really tight inside of your body, if that's not the door, the mind can like crash it, like, crash the head against that wall, because it's not even a door anymore, and not be able to access it. So I feel like having a place where you can express yourself in the craft that you love is a beautiful thing. Whether you decide then to go and share that with some other humans or not, up to you. Even, like, for example, for me, in my case, like, there are things that I offer, there are things that I create, and that I know are part of like something that I'm going to share with someone else. And I also have things that are just my own.
Yeah.
Because I need them.
Yeah.
For myself.
I mean, same thing with even music producers, to learn that they have these thousands of songs that no one else hears, but they only release, far and few between. Like, yeah.
So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what it feels true for me right now.
Yeah, I feel like that was a full circle of that sensitivity that you brought. I'm just like, I'm a very visual person, and I can tell you are too by the way you describe things. But I just see, like, I think we brought it up in the mystery school. It's also said in Ayurveda, which I study, and that like diet. So there's specific saying in Ayurveda is diet is anything that is consumed through any of the senses. Doesn't matter what your state of mind is, doesn't matter what form it comes in, as long as it's coming in through some sense, whether that be taste, touch, smell, all the senses here, all the things, our body is consuming that. And so thinking of like health or even just emotional digestion, like how are we, what's the state of our digestion? Is it sluggish? Is it really fast and quick? Is it like taking its time? Is it balanced, And then what is it creating from that? because our digestion, you know, like it takes apart the nutrients that we need and bring it throughout our body. And sometimes things get stuck and sometimes things start creating disease, and some things like we just release and let go. Oh my God, this is an amazing analogy that just like is coming through me in this moment.
I love
But
it.
but yeah, I feel like everything we go through, whether inner or outer, we have to digest, and like tending to the state of our digestion and how are we taking, you know, like what are we taking from it and what are we releasing from it? And
Mm-hmm.
not to make the process too fast or too slow, and just like
Mm-hmm.
really nourishing ourselves through the process.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. And I feel actually like with your analogy, being a deeply sensible person is like having the capacity to ingest more, but not necessarily to digest more.
Wow. Oh, wow. Wow.
So it's really coming to a relationship with like how much you can intake for you to naturally be able to process. And that the processing capacity can also expand, but it needs to be, you know, in harmony with each other. Because if, you know, if it's only like a whole lot of ingestion, but like very little capacity to digest and, you know, process that, it's also going to create all sorts of imbalances. And the other way around, the same. Like if we're
Right.
just cut out from, you know, cut out from life, and we're just hungry for more, and like we have all these things, like that also creates a different kind of distortion.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That was beautiful. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So are you, I think I saw you offering a class a while back. What are your offerings right now? What are you doing in the world?
In the world. I have my steady one-on-one mentoring options. It's a very beautiful, intimate space. And one of it is called Creatrix, and it's based on these like re-nourishing of yourself as a creator.
I love that.
Think this of people that like the image that comes with me through this is like people that have been walking through the desert creatively, you know, that forgot that that's an option, that but there's a craving for a life that feels juicy, a life that feels very like nourishing, alive, fresh. I think there's a lot of us that are really, really looking for that, but we don't know where to go. And one of the paths, because it's not the path, one of the paths is through re-enlivening your creativity and bringing yourself back into harmony with creation, because that's what the production model creates. It creates like wasteland, dry patches, and people that have been like working in those structures for like a long time feel that, you know, like the reason why there's like so many humans burned out at this time, why so many people are feeling like maxed at their capacity, and yet they like are expected to perform more, to achieve more, to do more. That's like a drying of your inner landscape, you know. You have like sucked out all the juice out of that land, and it's not over, you know, like it's not too late. So Creatrix is really like that reintroduction of harmony into your inner landscape, so that creations can also be nourished from that. It's a very beautiful process of I feel like it's like a midwifing through that, through either create like having been like really creative and really successful, and then like what do you do when that cycle finishes, and then you're on to creating the next thing, and there's all these expectations of what you should be doing. It's a beautiful process, like whether you're coming from like the dry land or you're coming from the other side, which is like the bounty, and then like oh, and now what? It's equally scary. I feel like it's like I've been in both ends, and it's like it's challenging. So that's Creatrix, and I have Money Nectar, which is a really, really sweet intimate space to go into the dynamics we have with money, and is not from like the let's manifest like da like it like it's not from that angle. It's from a very personal thing that we can definitely talk in another moment, because this would give us like hours to talk about. but it's a lot around the capacity to interact with the energetic field of money.
Oof, wow. Which
So
some of
if you
us
just,
we don't even, not even taught that that's an existent thing.
I
We're
know,
just
I
taught this is an
know,
object and nothing about
and
it. Like, and
you
we're
gotta have
handed
it.
all these codes of how we want to react to it and think about it and judge it and crave it
Mm-hmm.
and hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So it has a like it's a really beautiful process of like understanding energy from an energetic, like money from an energetic perspective, not in a woo-woo like just like call it in, because there's a beauty in that, but there's also like I just like feet on the ground kind of energy. And the ancestral piece, because
Mm.
for me, in my personal journey with it, I've had very intense reactions to money my whole life. Intense, when I say intense, it's like I would be like in a proper meltdown from like something that came through the mail and I needed to pay, and having the money to pay it, like
And you,
having the money in my bank account, I'm being completely out of my freaking like capacity to regulate that. And for the
wow.
longest time, it felt very disorienting. It felt very shameful, because I was like, it would quote unquote make sense if I didn't have it. But if I have it, why am I like in this place? So
Mm-hmm.
for the longest time, I just packed that in silence, because I was like, no, like I'm not allowed to talk about this.
Wow.
But I still kept having that until life, many processes, many things, many streams led to opening up to what had happened before me, and like almost like reality check, hello, like you're chapter 1 of your story, but you're chapter 72 from like your parents' story, chapter like 174 from your grandparents' story, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
all of that is accumulated as well. And a lot of like these unfelt processes and like money, like it touches like so much of our lives and so much of our ancestors' lives, and we sometimes don't even know that that is a possibility, to like zoom out from that hyper individual, like me wanting to make money so I can live a life that I feel good with, into like, where were these people? What did they experience? How did that like, how can I trace that?
Mm.
I didn't have that. So at one point this came around, and it has been really, really beautiful to walk with people along that journey.
Yeah.
So those are like my steady, those are there. Those are always available. So if you're listening to this, if you want to come through, if you want to have a conversation about it, I'm open for it. Those are the ones that are always open. And I always have things that I create, because sometimes I just need more pacing myself with the things that I have coming up. But yeah, those are like the steady ones. There's also some beautiful like self-paced nourishing things that you can find on my website. Mostly of that is done through recorded transmissions, like mostly like these sort of format where I can sit down with the idea and offer, a sweet, steady, delicious thing. So there's one for nourishing your new ideas into life, and it's called Seedling. And it's like
Oh,
these like seedling ideas that you have, like how do you keep them? How do you nourish them into the bigger things that they want to become? Because again, so many of us have these baby tiny ideas and they get squashed. We squash them or someone else squashes them. And just to learn like how to give them enough space and enough direction um to see them growing. um yeah, so
cool.
it's full of good things.
I love that. What's your
Thank you.
website?
It's nourishingrich.com.
Okay. And
So
that's
you can
also
go and
your
find it.
Instagram handle at
Yes,
Nourishing Witch.
Nourishing Witch.
Awesome. This
Yes.
was so beautiful, Andrea. Thank you
Thank
so
you. I
much.
love the questions. It was so good.
I can't wait to have you on again and have some more beautiful, amazing conversations.
Yes, let's do that for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.